You survive the battle, but not freedom. Vikings don't only take gold, they take you. Smoke still rises from your village as chains close around your wrists. But what they plan for defeated warriors' wives is worse than death itself. Dragged.
Onto ships you stare at endless sea, some whisper of markets, others of sacrifice. No one knows who will live or how.
What waits across the waves makes the battlefield look merciful. Inside the longhouse, silence rules. The chieftain watches. Women kneel, stripped of names, waiting to learn their fate. Wife, slave, concubine, or something far darker. Because in Viking lore, the dead were not the only ones buried alive. The ropes cut deeper than the wounds of war. Every glance from your captors strips away dignity. They laugh as if your terror is part of the spoils, but humiliation is only the beginning of what they demand. Women stand beside silver and swords, treated as treasures to be weighed, bargained, or traded. Each moment your worth shrinks from person to property, from life to currency. The cruelest price has not yet been named. The ocean rages, yet it is not the storm you fear. Songs of victory drown out your weeping. The wives of warriors become trophies carried across waves toward a fate none dare speak aloud. What awaits ashore eclipses the storm. Markets reek of salt and sweat. Furs, weapons, and human lives exchange hands. Strangers examine you as though testing cattle, noting strength, beauty, or obedience. Choice is gone. But some women were never sold. They were chosen for something even darker. Inside the longhouse, feasting never stops. Warriors roar over meat and mead, their women chained like shadows behind them. For the victors, conquest means celebration. For the captured, silence means survival. But silence cannot shield you from what follows. For survivors, the battle never ended. Viking wives became slaves in foreign halls, ordered to clean, cook, and serve their captors. Servitude wasn't survival. It was humiliation carved into every breath, every gesture, every whisper in the dark. What punishment awaited those who refused? One decree from the chieftain decided their fate. Families shattered in a single gesture. Mothers pulled from children, wives torn from kin. Viking law was not about justice. It was about dominance, enforced through separation, silence, and fear. But resistance still flickered, however briefly. If a woman fought back, her punishment became spectacle. Tied before the crowd, mocked, stripped of dignity, defiance was crushed not in private but in front of all, a warning etched into memory. Resistance meant disgrace or death. Yet whispers spread of something even more terrifying. Captives whispered at night. Not about freedom, not about home, but about a ritual none dared to describe in full. A ritual reserved not for slaves, but for wives of warriors. The so-called spoils of conquest. And it began with firelight and silence. The ritual began with spectacle. Wives were paraded before drunken warriors, eyes scanning them like plunder. They weren't seen as people. They were trophies, displayed like gold or weapons, reduced to prizes for the conqueror's amusement. But the chieftain's decision sealed their fate. When the chieftain pointed, destiny ended. A woman's identity vanished. She became property, claimed in a single gesture. What should have been mourning turned into performance. What should have been dignity became a transaction carved into firelit nights. And what followed was darker still. Once chosen, there was no escape. Inside the sealed longhouse, wives became part of a ritual union. Forced marriages without vows, celebrations without joy. Each scream, muffled by fire and song, became another chapter of fear unrecorded in the sagas. But the ritual did not end there. Tears glistened in firelight as shadows swallowed their voices. Silence followed, heavy and eternal. Yet what came after the ritual was worse. A fate that made some pray for death rather than survive another night. And hidden chambers revealed the truth. Beneath the longhouse lay chambers few outsiders knew existed. Here, women were hidden away, their cries muffled by earth and timber. Days turned into weeks. Hope turned into memory. These were prisons disguised as storerooms, graves without dirt, and marks branded them forever. The captives were branded, iron to flesh, leaving scars of ownership that outlived their screams. To the Vikings, it was proof of control. To the women, it was erasure, identity reduced to a mark of fire. But scars on the body were nothing compared to scars on the soul. Over time, the worst wounds were invisible, names forgotten, languages silenced, their reflections no longer recognizable. They were alive, but not themselves. The Vikings had not only conquered bodies, but dismantled identities. And for some, mercy meant only one thing. Among the captives, survivors whispered truths that chilled the blood. Death, they said, was sometimes kinder than survival. To live under Viking rule wasn't life. It was a slow unraveling of everything that once defined them. And soon, new horrors were born in the shadows. In the shadows, cries of infants pierced the silence. Children born of conquest, caught between bloodlines of conqueror and conquered. They were proof of domination, and yet often abandoned to the same cruel fate as their mothers. Some women vanished without a trace. Some captives simply disappeared. Led into forests at night, they were never seen again. No record, no grave, no song remembered their names. Their silence became part of the Viking legend, erased without even a whisper. And those left behind faced something even worse. See about longhouse doors closed with finality. Inside, shadows moved against walls, cries muffled by timber. What happened behind those doors was rarely spoken aloud, even by those who survived. Terror lived not in detail, but in silence. But one truth was whispered, never written, one haunting. Truth echoed across generations. The sagas praised Viking bravery, but never told of the women who lived in their shadows. Their voices were erased, their suffering buried. What happened inside those halls? No saga dared to write. The silence
itself was the loudest condemnation.
Not all captives remained in halls. Some were marched to markets, displayed like wares. Their worth was measured not in dignity, but in silver. The same coins that bought weapons now bought lives. Human sorrow traded like livestock. But silver was not the only currency. Silver bought survival, but sometimes other currencies sealed fates. Wine, cloth, weapons, all exchanged for wives and daughters. To Vikings, everything had value. To the women, every transaction carved away another piece of their humanity, and the voyages carried them even further. Chained aboard long ships, captives vanished beyond the horizon. Sold in Ireland, England, even Byzantium. The North Sea became a corridor of despair. Each wave carried them further from home, and deeper into a world built on conquest and trade. But not all seas led to markets. Some wives never reached markets. Chieftains offered them to gods as sacrifices, blood-staining altars in the name of victory. What began as conquest ended as ritual, their deaths claimed as gifts to Odin, Fra, or Thor. But sacrifice carried a cruel irony. To the warriors, sacrifice proved devotion. To the women, it was theft of life, of story, of legacy. No grave, no remembrance, only ash and whispers. Their deaths praised in sagas, their voices silenced forever. Yet some voices found ways to endure. Not all records were lost. In faded chronicles, hints survive. Lines of weeping women, fragmented notes about captives. Anonymous scribes, risking censure, left glimpses of truth between myths. The sagas spoke of glory, but parchment whispered of grief. And grief reshaped generations. Many captives became farm laborers. Fields replaced freedom. Toil replaced family. Bent backs broke under endless tasks. Weaving, harvesting, carrying. Survival came with exhaustion, while every sunrise was a reminder of chains no one could see. And some were forced into roles far stranger. Others were kept as healers or seers. Knowledge twisted into service for masters. Women who once tended, villages now brewed for captors. Their wisdom was used but never honored, a cruel theft of identity and skill. Yet sometimes, knowledge was their only weapon. Some captives turned knowledge into rebellion. Herbs became poisons, remedies became weapons. A single whispered dose could change a night of fear into vengeance. Yet discovery meant death, and so every attempt was a gamble against fate, and fate rarely played fair. When captives were caught defying masters, punishment was brutal. Dragged into storms, beaten before crowds, their suffering turned into warning. To resist was to invite spectacle, to endure was to vanish quietly. Either way, dignity was erased, but not all punishments ended in death. Some were forced into false honor, made wives of their captors, paraded in finery while hearts bled unseen. Silk and gold did not erase chains. Every toast raised in the hall was another nail in their hidden coffin, and their children bore that legacy. Children born of conquest carried divided bloodlines. Some were cherished as heirs, others despised as reminders of shame. Their very existence blurred lines between enemy and kin. For mothers, love was constant, but fear shadowed every embrace, and some bloodlines carried secrets far beyond the hall. Modern science reveals their hidden presence. DNA studies trace captive women across Viking lands, silent threads linking families today to forgotten mothers. History silenced them, but blood preserved their survival in ways no saga ever dared record. But survival did not always mean freedom. For many, survival meant endless voyages. Each horizon promised nothing but new chains, new masters, new grief. Survival without freedom was another kind of death. A life stretched thin between shorelines, carried endlessly by the tide. And some tides carried them to fates unimaginable. Some were taken to foreign empires, Byzantium, even the caliphates, sold as curiosities, treasures, or servants to nobility. They vanished into palaces, their voices swallowed by marble and gold. Their silence became another empire's hidden foundation, but even palaces could not guarantee mercy. Inside palaces, their fates twisted again, surrounded by wealth, yet trapped in cages gilded with silk. Survival meant obedience, resistance meant disappearance. Their stories, if told at all, were whispered behind veils, erased in official records. And erasure itself was the cruelest fate. Years passed. Some captives aged in silence, becoming shadows in foreign lands. Memories faded, but grief lingered. For them, the fire's glow wasn't warmth. It was memory of lives stolen, names erased, stories left untold, until death itself became a release. Many were buried without names, their graves unmarked, their stories erased. Soil became their
only witness.
History celebrated warriors and kings. But beneath the earth lay thousands of forgotten wives, captives, and mothers, remembered only by silence. Yet silence can sometimes scream. Centuries later, archaeologists uncover fragments, bracelets, bones, scars etched into skeletons. Each discovery screams what the sagas refused to say. The silence of history breaks piece by piece in the dirt beneath our feet, and one discovery revealed the darkest truth. One skeleton told a story no saga dared, chained wrists, fractured bones, evidence of torment, proof that captivity was not just myth, but daily reality. The truth, hidden in soil, rose to accuse centuries of silence, and silence itself became their loudest testimony. Even in runes, faint hints survive. Stones praising conquests stand beside fragments of sorrow hidden between lines. Where warriors carved glory, women carved silence. Absence, louder than any boast. A story told through what was never written, and the unwritten still echoes today. Modern descendants stand before runes, unaware their blood carries voices erased from history. Each heartbeat a reminder of forgotten mothers. Their silence lingers, a haunting inheritance passed through time. The past isn't gone. It still breathes in us, and that breath demands remembrance. Long ships burned to honor warriors, but no flames marked the captives. Yet in every smoke trail, their shadows rise. Unseen, unnamed, but never gone. Their silence became the sea's roar, their sorrow the wind's endless song. And one question remains unanswered. What did the wives truly endure? The sagas never told. Their captors celebrated conquest, but their eyes told another story. A story buried, silenced, waiting centuries to be heard. And now you're hearing it, but the darkest chapters still lie ahead. Inside smoky halls, survival meant submission. Captives poured mead with trembling hands, pretending not to exist. Every horn lifted in cheer became a reminder that their voices were stolen, their lives reduced to shadows beneath the warriors.
Roars, but silence was never safe. A glance, a gesture could seal her fate.
Defiance meant punishment. Even silence could provoke suspicion. Every step in the hall was a gamble, every breath a test. Captivity turned life into a script written by others, and scripts sometimes demanded spectacle. At feasts, captives became unwilling performers. Forced to dance, sing, or serve, their humiliation became entertainment. For warriors, it was victory displayed. For the women, each performance was another layer of dignity stripped away before hostile eyes. But humiliation was not the cruelest fate. Captives could be judged before entire clans. Their fates decided in moments: marriage, servitude, or death. One word from a chieftain determined everything. For women, judgment circles weren't trials of justice. They were lotteries of despair, and lotteries rarely ended with mercy. Those condemned faced pyres or drowning, death disguised as ritual. Their lives extinguished not for crimes but for conquest. Fire consumed their stories, and the ashes joined. Countless others whose names never reached the sagas, but some stories still slipped through. In rare chronicles, fragments survive. Notes scribbled in margins, sketches of weeping women, quiet testimony hidden among prayers. Monks could not change their fates, but some dared to record whispers of sorrow before censors erased them. Yet erasure was itself a weapon. Most evidence vanished. Rune stones celebrated conquest, not captivity. The silence of stone became its own cruelty. History honored warriors while ignoring wives of the defeated. Their erasure was as deliberate as their capture. But blood remembers what stone forgets. Modern science now recovers what sagas denied. DNA reveals captives woven into bloodlines across Scandinavia, Ireland, and beyond. Their children carried the legacy of conquest. Proof that forgotten mothers endured even when stories tried to erase them. But endurance came at a cost. Children of conquest lived torn between worlds. Loved by some, hated by others. For mothers, each embrace carried fear. Would this child be heir or outcast? Every heartbeat felt like a gamble on survival, and some gambles ended in betrayal. Some children were sold, bartered like their mothers before them. Their lives exchanged for silver or alliances, betrayal cut deeper than chains. A mother's worst nightmare wasn't death, it was watching her child vanish into another man's hands. But betrayal also reshaped power. Even noble women played roles. Some pitied captives, others saw rivals. A whisper could save or condemn. In the shadows of halls, women were not only victims, they could also be wielders of hidden influence. But influence came with danger. A single glance between mistress and captive could spark jealousy, suspicion, or accusation. Influence turned fragile in halls thick with rivalry. For enslaved women, survival meant walking an invisible line that shifted with every passing hour, and some lines ended in blood. Rivalries sometimes erupted in violence. Captives became scapegoats for feuds they never started, punished for insults, accused of sorcery, condemned for survival itself. Their lives balanced on tempers of masters they could never control. But some turned tempers into weapons. Some captives
struck back. Poison slipped into cups, secrets whispered at the right ear, alliances made in shadows. Vengeance was dangerous, but it was the only power left. Even in chains, some refused to be silent, but silence could also be survival. Others chose quiet endurance. Fields became prison and refuge. Work dulled pain. Silence disguised rebellion. For them, survival wasn't loud or defiant. It was steady, patient, waiting for storms to pass. Sometimes survival itself was victory. Yet victory was fragile. Storms claimed captives as often as warriors. Shipwrecks scattered bones across foreign shores. Some women never reached halls or markets. Their chains sank with them.
swallowed by seas that carried their sorrow farther than any saga could tell. But some sorrows resurfaced centuries later. Excavations reveal shackled skeletons buried far from homeland. Each discovery pulls forgotten voices back from silence, shackles still around wrists, scars carved into bone. Proof that captivity was not legend, but lived horror, buried beneath centuries of soil, and bones were only part of the evidence. Beside bones, personal relics appear. Combs, beads, torn cloth, small fragments of lives erased from storybooks. Each relic whispers a name, a memory. Each artifact says, someone lived, someone suffered, someone was forgotten, and forgetting was the final cruelty. Most graves remained unmarked. Thousands of captives buried without names, denied remembrance. Earth swallowed them. Silence kept them. History honored kings with stones and tales, while their wives were given only dirt and oblivion. Yet oblivion never lasts forever. Now their stories surface.
In museums,
Visitors see jewelry, tools, fragments of daily life. Few realize these objects belong to women stolen by conquest. Each display glass hides tears, screams, and resilience buried inside silent relics. And one relic told a story no saga dared, a brooch inscribed with runes told of captivity, carved in secret. Not a tale of warriors, but of sorrow. Proof that even in chains, women found ways to carve their truth. In symbols, if not in words. And symbols spoke across centuries. Today, descendants wear pendants, unaware of their origins. Jewelry, once torn from captives, now adorns modern
necks. Bloodlines and artifacts carry secrets across centuries, connecting forgotten mothers to families who never knew their names. But some secrets cannot stay hidden. The halls are gone, their stones scattered.
Yet the echoes remain. Whispers of women forced to serve, silenced by conquest, erased by memory. Their stories outlived the halls, carried not in sagas, but in silence, and silence was their final rebellion. By the shorelines where ships once sailed, silence rises with mist. Forgotten voices breathe through waves and winds. Though history buried them, the sea keeps their memory alive, a haunting chorus no saga can silence. But the sea still has more to reveal. Markets turned women into coin, defeated wives, stripped of names, became property traded beside cattle and weapons. The roar of bargaining drowned out cries. Freedom was gone, replaced by the cold clang of silver. But silver bought more than our bodies. Nobles bought captives not only as servants, but as symbols of wealth. Each purchase displayed power. Women became ornaments of humiliation, reminders to rivals that defeat carried a permanent living scar, and some scars spread through bloodlines. Children born from conquest blurred bloodlines. Some were claimed, others cast out. Wives of nobles saw captives as rivals, their children as threats. The home turned into a battlefield of silent, poisonous rivalries. And poison wasn't always just metaphor. Poison became a whispered weapon. Captives sometimes struck back, slipping death into cups. The hall could turn silent in a heartbeat, suspicions spreading like fire. Trust died faster than the warriors themselves, but vengeance had its own cost. Those accused of rebellion faced brutal punishment. Beaten, drowned, or stoned, their deaths became lessons for others. Each act of vengeance demanded blood in return, ensuring no captive forgot her chains, and the chains could outlast generations. Even blacksmiths profited from suffering, forging shackles and collars designed for human bodies. These tools of control became part of everyday trade, as common as swords or plows. Captivity was industry, and industry became law. Councils decided fates of captives like livestock. Rules of ownership, rights of sale, punishments for escape, all etched into oral law. What began as conquest became codified cruelty, but even law could be twisted. Captives often faced accusations of sorcery. Miscarriage? Blame the captive. Failed harvest? Blame the captive. Trials became spectacles of fear, turning victims into scapegoats for disasters they never caused. And sometimes, scapegoats became sacrifices. Some captives were sacrificed, too, Gods bound at altars while warriors chanted. Lives offered as currency for victory or good harvest. Death, disguised as devotion, became one of the cruelest ending. But not the last. Even children learned cruelty early. They watched punishment like lessons, absorbing conquest as tradition. Generations inherited a world where suffering of captives wasn't questioned, it was normalized, and normalization made cruelty endless. Feasts demanded humiliation as entertainment. Captives danced to laughter that mocked their pain. For warriors, it was triumph. For women, every step was a reminder they were trophies, not people. Yet some trophies spoke louder in silence. Some resisted quietly, carving runes, hiding marks, leaving fragments of truth where sagas would not. These secret records challenged silence itself, daring to say, "We were here," and the earth later confirmed it. Excavations reveal skeletons with shackles still on. Iron that once bound flesh now clings to bone. Archaeology uncovers what sagas buried, a truth too cruel to be sung. But the bones carried more than shackles. Some graves hold mothers with children. Shackled even in death, they lay together, in silence. Bones whisper what history ignored. Captivity stole not only lives but futures, and futures haunt the present. Today, classrooms teach Viking raids as legend. Relics shine in glass cases, yet the women behind them remain ghosts, their stories barely spoken. History remembers the swords, not the scars, but scars shape descendants too. DNA now proves what sagas hid. Captive women left bloodlines stretching across nations. Their descendants live today, unaware their resilience flows in every vein. But resilience came through suffering. The halls fell. The warriors died. But the silence of women endured longest, echoing through stones, now in ruin. Their erasure became history's longest shadow. Yet shadows are never eternal. The sea that carried ships now carries whispers. Waves crash against ruined shores like voices demanding remembrance. Their suffering refuses silence. Their memory refuses erasure. And remembrance reshapes how we see Vikings. Tourists admire axes, swords, and ships. But behind every artifact lies unseen grief. Ghostly mothers still linger, unseen in the glass. The stories untold are the ones that matter most, and one story remained hidden until now. A brooch once dismissed as decoration revealed hidden runes. Carved lines spoke of captivity, survival, sorrow. It wasn't ornament, it was testimony. A woman's voice carved in secret survived centuries of silence, and her testimony changes everything. Through relics, bones and whispers, their hands reach toward us. Every story uncovered becomes a connection, binding past to present. Captivity tried to erase them. Memory brings them back, but one final question remains. As long ships burned, warriors were honored. But women, erased from sagas, remained unnamed. Their silence was not weakness, it was history's theft. And now it is history's greatest revelation. But what if their silence was rebellion? Warriors claimed victory with steel, but women carried the weight of defeat. They walked across battlefields not as victors but as survivors, their stories buried under iron and ash. And survival itself carried power. The ruins remain, cliffs holding secrets. Yet mist carries their voices still, a haunting chorus demanding recognition. The wives of the defeated were not forgotten. They are here, waiting for history to listen, and history is finally listening. The stones of Viking ruins whisper louder than sagas. Women's faces emerge from silence, reminding us conquest was not only steel and fire, but the breaking of lives meant to vanish. But vanishing was never complete. Runestones told stories of warriors, but beneath cracks lie hidden carvings. Faint symbols of sorrow and survival etched by hands, never meant to be remembered. History's loudest voices silenced the quietest truths, until archaeologists uncovered them. Excavations revealed brooches and pins hiding secret runes, testimonies of captivity. Silent resistance survived through metal, not words. A final, Defiance carved into objects passed down centuries, and those objects still travel with us. Today, descendants unknowingly wear relics of survival. Jewelry that once carried pain now glitters as art. Behind every polished piece is a ghost pressing against glass, whispering, "Remember me," and remembrance changes the living. DNA reveals the truth. Many carry bloodlines of captives who endured humiliation, pain, and silence. Their survival became the foundation of nations. You may be their descendant, bearing resilience carved through cruelty. But resilience was never freely given. The warriors' glory burned on pyres, their ships sinking with ashes. Yet women endured longer than fire. They outlived empires, carried across generations in bloodlines that refused to disappear. Their endurance is our inheritance. Burial mounds honor warriors, but ghosts of women walk beyond them. They move toward dawn, not death. Their stories were buried, but their steps carried into the future. And now those steps reach us. Medieval manuscripts praised kings and raiders, yet ink smudges hint at erased names. Silent resistance lingers, even in forgotten corners of parchment. The truth stains history, refusing to vanish, and stains demand to be seen. Classrooms teach conquests as adventure, not horror. Yet behind every image of ships and swords, unseen hands press against the glass of history, begging us to look deeper. And deeper reveals a darker cost. Festivals reenact raids with laughter and cheer. But ghosts remain among the crowds, unseen. They remind us celebration is built on forgotten suffering, and memory can never be complete without them. And one memory still unsettles scholars. An unearthed ledger listed women by numbers, not names, bought, sold, traded, their lives reduced to lines of ink, erasing identity with cold precision. Cruelty wasn't chaos. It was organized, and organization meant scale. Slave ships carried more than plunder. They carried entire populations broken by war. Below deck, women sat shackled in darkness, their voices swallowed by the sea. Conquest became industry, cruelty became empire, and empire still echoes today. Courts today display Viking shackles as relics, but to descendants they are not artifacts, they are evidence. Every rusted chain is testimony to voices that history tried to silence, and testimony can reshape memory. Battlefields became cities, markets became museums, but ghosts walk through both worlds, reminding us modern streets are paved with forgotten screams. Every stone hides a history too few will face until we dare to face it. One skeleton revealed chains fused to bone, proof that captivity did not end at death. Bones still bore the memory of iron, forcing history to confront what sagas ignored. And bones speak louder than sagas. On cliffs once ruled by warriors, ghostly women stand against the storm. They are not trophies, they are not forgotten. They are witnesses waiting for us to listen, and listening changes everything. Artifacts shine in glass, admired by crowds. But reflections hold hidden faces. Women erased from stories return in silence, demanding their place in the tale of conquest, and their place reshapes the ending. The torch of survival passes through centuries. What captives endured became resilience in descendants. Their pain became strength. Their silence became a whisper we still carry. But the whisper asks a question. Look into a mirror. Somewhere, a face you see carries echoes of the forgotten. Their story isn't just past. It lives inside you, whether you know it or not, and knowing changes you. Shipwrecks lie beneath waves, but women rise through water like shadows ascending. They refuse burial, rising toward memory, rising toward recognition, rising toward justice. History denied, and justice is overdue. Warriors are remembered in songs of glory. Women turn their backs on those songs, walking into light of their own. Their story was never weakness. It was survival, and survival is stronger than conquest. In every birth, today lies a fragment of survival. Life continues where conquest tried to erase it. Every child born is victory over centuries of cruelty, and victory continues. One haunting discovery: a mother's skeleton shielding her child. Death could not break her final act. Even in horror, love resisted conquest.
Love endured, and love still endures. The war against women never truly ended. But every birth, every survival, every choice defies centuries of chains. The wives of the defeated still walk with us, demanding we remember their strength, will.
You remember them? And this was only one forgotten chapter of Viking cruelty. What if you had to survive not captivity, but the Black Death itself? Tell me in the comments, would you have lasted even a single day? Subscribe. Survival only gets harder.